Good evening, folks. It's 6 o'clock. We might as well get started. Bob, where do we start? Apologies, Matt.
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Ahmed, who's been substituted by Councillor Marshall, and also Councillor Aslan Khan, who's been substituted by Councillor Amir.
Thank you. We don't have any minutes. Have I got a script to read out somewhere? Yes, here we go. Please note it is intended to live stream tonight's meeting of Scrutiny Finance Review Group. If successful, a recording of the meeting will be available on the Council's website within 24 hours. The induction loop is now operative. Members and officers, please remember to switch your microphones on and speak directly into the microphone, and switch off again after speaking. Reporting officers using Teams, if we have any this evening, please switch cameras on when addressing the committee and off again after speaking. Please use the hands up icon to indicate questions and comments. I will then invite you to speak. There are no exempt or private items on the agenda this evening. We don't have any minutes. You know the rules on declarations of interest as well as I do, so please remember you have to declare either now or when the item comes up. So, no section 106, Matt?
None that I'm aware of, Chair.
Thank you. No urgent business, no references. Chair's announcements. Yeah, there are a couple of things I do need to say. First of all, you will notice that the items that came out originally on yellow paper to be taken in secret are no longer intended to be taken in secret. And I think I need to explain the reason why that has occurred. When I went through the papers, I considered that item 14 on yellow, which I believe is now item 13, contained no information at all that could justify excluding members of the public, and I complained in those terms very strongly. As a result, the same report is now being taken in public. We were told that the exempt items had been removed. I have to tell you, no items were removed between the yellow and the white pages. And I'm forced, therefore, to conclude that the reason that the item was intended to be taken in secret was to avoid embarrassment. And frankly, that's not a good enough reason. And whenever an item comes up which looks that way to me, I will continue to complain and get it taken in private. I'll come to you in a moment. The second item on the agenda was item 15, is now item 14. The only reason that item could be taken in private rather than in public was because it included the names and addresses of debtors. Now, I fully understand and agree that these individuals are, in fact, almost certainly among the lowest income families in the borough, and that in spite of suffering the burden of this debt hanging over them, they certainly don't deserve then to have their names and addresses published. The only people who ought to have their names and addresses published in this situation, as far as I'm concerned, are those who are convicted of fraud or those who have been subject to court action because they are able to pay and are refusing to do so. That doesn't apply to any of these people. With the removal of the names and addresses, the report has no reason at all to be taken in private and is therefore now being taken in public. Hussein, you've got a comment to make.
I want to hear clarification. What you said, embarrassment to who? What did you mean by embarrassment for some?
Embarrassment to whom I have no idea, Councillor Hussain, that there is no other reason that I can think of why a report that contained no exempt information at all should have been originally proposed to be taken in private. If you've got a reason that you could think of, then please let me know. I can't think of one.
No, I just taken back. I just sat here and I heard this, that is embarrassment. And as a member of this committee, I want to know who is embarrassment to who. It has to be clarified. If we are making a statement, it has to be clarified. But what is the evidence? It's embarrassment to who?
Evidence is that there is no reason why the item should be taken in secret. If the item is discussing nearly £500,000 of taxpayers' money being written off, it's my view those taxpayers are entitled to know what the council is doing and are entitled to be given reasons why it is being done. That's precisely what the report does. So the only possible reason for it being proposed in private in the first place would be to save embarrassment, presumably, for the council. I don't know. But in any event, it's now being taken in public.
Chair, can I I think we'll have to go back and look at it. But maybe there has been an oversight here, because if you look, when the report will be discussed, there is reference here. I think in the past, I have to go back and check, I think we used to put the name there. So in the past, if the name was included, that's the reason it was not being published it was in private. But I have to go back and check. But you're absolutely right, if there's no name, there might have been an oversight. That's why it was put in private. And when you raise this, straight away we agreed, we said, yeah, but look at it, and there's no name, and we said, yeah, let's put it in public. So there was nothing which but maybe there was an oversight, but I remember in the past their report, I think for council tax and sometimes business rate, we do put the names. So we have to check whether that was an oversight. In the past, it always came in private, whether the name were included at that time in this column, but now the name was not there. So I agree fully, if the name is not there, absolutely you have to put it in public. But at some point, I think council tax, and we were including names as well, and those are the main reasons. So it was a bit oversight from the officers to not look at the column where there are numbers but not name, and try to put it in private rather than in public. But as I said, we can go through the report later and we can have a detailed discussion about the write-off and the level of write-offs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Dev. It just seems to me that if I noticed that it shouldn't have been in private, then perhaps somebody else should have done before the papers were circulated. We'll move on then to item 11, which is a scale of charges. Sorry, have I missed something?
You've got agenda item 8.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, that's... Excuse me, Dev. We've got your finance updates first.
Okay, so thank you, Chair. I think last time we brought the quarter one to the committee and it was scrutinized. But right now we are working on quarter two, which is the next sort of July, August, September. We've got some indicative figures, but we are finalizing and it have to go through the due process and discuss at DMTs and CLMT and come to executive. But at this stage, I can just brief the committee that the pressures are still there. So the main areas in terms of social care, homelessness, special education need, transport is still there. And in fact, the pressures has increased. So just to give you an early indicative figures that in terms of the pressure in adult social care and children, the pressures has increased. And we experience, all local government are experiencing, but when the report will come to the FRGs, then we'll have much more detailed information. And at the same time, we're looking at what else we can do to mitigate those pressures. But especially those areas where there's demand-led, the pressures are still in the system, and those pressures, unfortunately, are increasing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Okay, moving on then. Item 10. I'm sorry, I thought David dealt with that in the... Do you want to deal with item 9 separately?
9, okay. So the 10 was the 24, 25, yeah. So there was a meeting last night at Audit Committee. So we had Ernst & Young, our auditors, present. So the 18-19 final accounts was presented to the Audit Committee. And the auditors have produced the report, which is a disclaimer, was discussed, and we have been discussing over the last 4 years. So hopefully the 18-19 account, we've got closure now. So with the audit report, which is a disclaimer, the officers have signed it, and we are waiting for auditors to send the sign, and we'll include, and that will be published the final. So that's, yeah, but there was other discussion which took place. So for 1920, 2021, 21, 22, 22, 23, we are going to bring those to a audit committee, which will be arranged 3rd week of November, because based on the government backstop, all the accounts, including 22, 23, will have to be signed by 13th of December. So to give auditors time to review and sign, we'll bring it to audit committee 3rd week of November, and we get those accounts signed. And at the same time, we're working on the 23, 24, which our new auditors, GT, and that is progressing. So just to say by 13th of December, that's based on the statutory instrument by central government on backstop, those will have to be signed by 13th of December. So that's just to give an update where we are on those accounts.
Anybody? Okay, moving on then. Item 10, financial aspects of the Council's integrated care system, is withdrawn from the agenda. I understand the authors are seeking clarification on exactly what this group actually wants to look at. I believe this is something instigated by David Wynne. If that's the case, perhaps he could have some correspondence with Matt to clarify exactly what he's after.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll do exactly that.
Thank you. Okay then, fees and charges. Who's going to be presenting this one, please?
That would be me, Chair. Good evening, all. I'm introducing the proposal for neighbourhood services. In particular, 2 service areas are looking to introduce in-year increases for parking and garden waste. We're seeking recommendations of the group, and hopefully if those recommendations are made, we can add them to our final report. And just to begin, I'll introduce the proposal for parking. So we are seeking to introduce an increase averaging 8% for car parking fees and on-street parking bays. I won't go into too much detail, as you've seen in the report what we're proposing, but it's probably relevant to state that in relation to car park fees, they've not been increased for a few years now, for a number of reasons. But yeah, if you would like to ask any questions about that, happy to take that. I'll hand over to Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Ash. I'm here to introduce the proposal to increase the garden waste subscription from £45 to £48 for the subscription year of 2025. This represents an increase of 6.6%. Also working to a recommendation to increase the charge for a replacement bin, currently £22.50, to cover the actual price incurred by the Council of £24.50. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you both. Can we, I'll come to you in a second, but can we deal with them separately, please? If we talk about the parking charges first and then come to the brown bins issue, otherwise we're going to be bouncing about all over the place. So, Councillor Farouk, was your question on the car parking charges?
Sorry, my concern is on gardening waste. You know, you go increasing gardening waste. You
want to talk about garden waste, can we deal with car parking first, please?
You do want copy? Yeah, okay.
Anybody got any comments or questions on car parking? David?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Only just a question, because I have coming up to OSB fairly soon a request to set up a task and finish group to do with nighttime economy within Luton. There has been a request from officers that we set up a task and finish group on that subject, which I know is up front in mind of several councillors. My concern is that perhaps we should differentiate more between daytime and evening parking, perhaps. I don't know if that's been given any consideration. I didn't see any reference to that in the document.
Steve? Oh, sorry, yeah, whoever wants to answer.
No problem. Happy to answer that. Very relevant question. So we do have specific evening tariffs in our car parks. There is no proposal to increase those charges. They are set the same as they were last financial year. Similarly, on the on-street parking bays, we don't actually have evening tariffs that apply. So it's free parking after 6 p.m. in the town centre.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just coming back on that, I suspect that we may be under pressure from the task and finish group in due course to reduce rather than keep level the nighttime parking. But I suppose we'll have to wait and see.
Anybody else on car parking? Councillor Farouk, your point on the bins, please.
My concern is on gardening waste. And as surely we have all seen in, the amount of the rubbish and fly tipping on the area, because I see if we're going to increase this from 45 to 50, and that will create more problem for the areas, and there could be more fly tipping going in the areas.
Yeah, if I can just come back on that, we've part of our benchmarking that we did when setting the price, we did contact some councils that have just recently introduced pricing for garden waste, and they basically confirmed that they could find no correlation between charging for the service and increased fly tipping.
Yes, please.
If I may, as a portfolio holder, could I just add to that a little bit, with your discretion?
I'm sorry, I didn't get what you were saying.
As portfolio holder, can I add to what Steve's
Well,
just
yes,
said?
of course you can, yeah.
Thank you, cheers. So just for clarity, the proposal is to put it up to 48, not 50. And also, when we've seen those increases, it has been a steady subscriber base of around 20,000. And all this is doing is trying to keep the service at cost. We're not trying to make money from this. We're not making additional income. It's just to keep it stop costing the council money. And as stated previously, the subscriber base has remained stable among previous increases, and also it is still lower than neighbouring councils as well.
Is that?
I think it may have been answered. I just wanted to get reassurances that both on the car parking and the green garden waste, that this was cost, we're not making any surplus, it's just all covering our costs.
Certainly with the garden waste, the costing is based on a subscription level of around 19,000. Since the conception of the scheme, we've ranged between 19 and 21,000. As you'll read from the report, current subscribers are about just over 20,000. So we have to give a little bit of contingency, but based on the fact that we've received the lower number, 19,000, we would recover our costs, Councillor, yes, and wouldn't make a profit.
And similarly for parking, the proposal is to cover our increasing costs. And just a point to highlight, the income from parking is ring-fenced, so we would only ever spend that back on road-related projects, highways projects. And yes, we have seen a drastic increase in our costs.
You happy with that?
Yeah, thank you. On the parking, I was just thinking whether there was a scope to look at our car parking and whether we can use cameras to actually record people coming in and out of the car parks, because I'm assuming we're using people and parking attendants to go and check cars in these car parks to make sure they've bought a ticket or not, and having it automated would allow those resources to be used elsewhere in the borough, where we have people parking on pavements, people parking in double yellow, and that are really causing a nuisance. So I just wondered whether we'd thought about some transformation in the way we police or monitor our car parks.
Absolutely. Yes, we have a portfolio holder for parking has previously mentioned this, and we've started exploring the options that are available. It is quite a considerable capital expenditure to begin with. We're just running some numbers to see how viable that is. But yeah, absolutely take your point.
Take that on board, please. Thank you.
On that subject, it's probably worth mentioning that some of the private car parks that operate this number plate recognition system, there have been difficulties with people visiting the car park more than once during the day and then being expected to pay as if they'd arrived and not left until their final departure. Just something to bear in mind if you're going on to number plate recognition systems. Expect complaints unless you find a way around that issue.
Just to address that point, Councillor, the use of ANPR is prohibited for council, so we wouldn't be able to use that particular system. So it would be another mechanism where a barrier gets released on payment. That's how we'd have to operate.
That's interesting. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Just one question from me then on the bins issue. I noticed the team of 12 staff, ranging from operatives and drivers to charge hands. How many charge hands do you need for a small team like that?
I believe the actual the driver is also the charge hand. It's a dual post, so the driver of the vehicle is the charge and the hand of the operatives.
Seems sensible. Thank you very much for that. Recommendation, I guess, is that we recommend to executive to increase the charges accordingly. Is that your view generally, members? Thank you very much indeed. So on we go to your work programme, which I think starts on page 16. I've got one suggestion I think we need to talk about, and that is the item we have on every agenda, a progress in achieving auditor's sign-off of the accounts. It just seems to me that that is an issue which has moved on since the council is now into a formal dispute and a formal complaint to the auditing supervisory body. Whether we might want to consider changing that regular report instead to an update on the council's complaint. What do people feel about that? Seems to be general agreement. Dev, do you have any issue to say there?
No, in principle, I'm okay, Chair. The only thing, because this being a complaint being dealt, I will have to check in terms of confidentiality how much I can update, and then I will just brief. If there's certain things I'm hearing and it says not confidential, I can give an update, absolutely. But if the organization or association or institute of chartered account says I'm not allowed to give any information until it's dealt with, but I will just liaise with you, Chair, just to make you aware of that. Yeah? But otherwise, no, absolutely. If there's anything I can brief the committee, I have been always briefing and being up to date and open about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dev. So, everybody happy with that? Thank you, Matt. And we move on again to item 14 on yellow pages, 13 on white pages. Who's going to present this for us, please?
Good evening. I'm here to inform the group of housing benefit overpayment debts that we're requesting over £10,000 to be written off. The debts occurred from a period 19th of April 1999 to the 21st December 2020. Housing benefit overpayments arise when debtors, well, taxpayers don't tell us of changes in circumstances, so we then have to recover the housing benefit, which we are fairly successful with, but sometimes due to one reason or another we're not able to collect debts. We do collect it. We exhaust all areas of collecting the housing benefit, and as I say, these are ones that we're unfortunately unable to collect back to 2020. So the recommendations are that these debts that are over £10,000 are recommended that we can write them off.
Thank you. Anybody? Okay, there's one question from me then, and that's, I just wonder, there are a number of these cases where there are substantial debts in the first year and continuing debts in subsequent years. I just wondered if we can have an example or two of the sort of circumstances which lead to a continuing overpayment over a number of years.
It's where we're not notified of somebody's changing circumstances till later on. Further down a line when it's not the first year, the second year, but the third year. So the debt is higher in the first year.
Can I just add, because Andrew is much more technical, but my understanding, Andrew, is when there's a change in circumstances, then if the change occurred, we've identified the changes, let's say year 3 or year 4, but the change happened in year 1, then when we raise the bill, we backdate it 2 or 3 years. And that's why you will see some of the debt are backdated, because we said that's when the change happened. Is that a fair reflection?
Yeah, that's correct, Dave.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think Councillor Abbas got in first.
I think similar to the chair, I mean, I was looking at Appendix 1, and I think the first case there's a £42,000 overpayment. I mean, that stretches nearly 15 years. I'm assuming the person is deceased, but I can't understand why over 15 years we will continue to pay them if they had deceased. And did we not know, or what happened around that?
No, they're deceased. They weren't deceased at the time. They're deceased now. That's why we can't recover the debt. Okay. We do send executive reports, but there's no money in the estate effectively.
Councillor Alley.
Thank you, Chair. I think not long ago we were in a similar situation trying to look at another load of write-offs. My question here is, are we actually administrating these council tax cases appropriately right from the beginning, and are we classifying these in the way that we should? Because that's quite a lot of money, and I'm thinking we're coming back to the fact that these people are obviously, they do need the help, they can't pay that money off. But are we actually doing our administration properly, or is there some issue within that is highlighting a lot of these numbers, which is then causing concern when it comes over to FRG and we're looking at it? Or could there be something that we could classify within our administration a bit differently, that wouldn't lead it as a debt against that person, but as a normal course of benefit or something, which wouldn't land on this report here. And we would then only look at those people that are genuinely, that haven't actually paid us.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that, but these are old debts, and the administration, the collection of the debt now, we've exceeded target over the last 4 or 5 years, and then these aren't council tax; these are housing benefit overpayments.
If I may, Chair, yeah, if I may. Now, the housing benefit legislation is very much prescriptive, so the officers will have to follow the legislation. And the point you're making, absolutely, like in the private sector, you say, do we issue a credit note rather than against the debt write-off? So say we owe them, it's a credit note. But housing benefit legislation is very prescriptive. So if after 3 years, if somebody has been claiming benefits, and then after 3 years, we subscribe to what's called national fraud initiatives, and they do the matching, and those days the matching were done every 2 to 3 years. So when the matching is done, then they will say there's a match here, somebody has got significant sort of income, but at the same time, those persons have been claiming benefits. So when you look at those matching, then under the legislation says that you've got to say, regard those overpayment since the event occurred. So 3 years ago, they had 50,000 in the bank account, then we haven't paid it, so we have to backdate that. So the legislation clearly says we've got to backdate it. And one of the things is when we've got an overpayment, whether it's due to claimant error or the council error, we do have a lose from DWP. So they will say if there's error, then there's a percentage we lose, but at the same time, we try to recover, and if we recover, we keep the 100%. So sometimes when we recover, we can recover more compared to how much we've lost. And you will see in paragraph 6, since 2019, the department recovered 22.8 million of housing benefit overpayment. So putting into context, we are talking about 421 for nearly sort of 20 years, which is above 10,000, but the total benefits every year we pay in the region of, you will see paragraph 7, 63 million. So we just, the amount of benefits we pay is quite a lot, and quite rightly, people or claimants who are entitled to those benefits, we try to process it, and the normal process, if they pass our test and we check and everything, and we effect payment. So even change in circumstances, if somebody will provide us with evidence that the change in circumstances, our target is within, right now, 14, 15 days?
That's great, yeah.
So within 14, 15 days, we will make those changes in circumstances. If somebody has been unemployed, they will increase their benefit. They are working, we reduce. But if somebody has not declared something, then it's very difficult after 2 or 3 years. But now, probably this debt will be lower because we've joined what we call the fraud hub. So this is something which we work with Hertfordshire County Council. So in the fraud hub, we do these tests now rather than waiting 2 or 3 years where we get information from NFI. We do it regularly on monthly, 2 monthly basis?
Monthly.
Monthly. So we've got the information. So if somebody has got the change in circumstances or something we need to know, that fraud hub will alert us. So then if there's an overpayment, there might be just 2 or 3 months overpayment rather than 2 years overpayment. And we also, you will see in paragraph 16, in terms of the point you've made, Councillor, is we don't just, if somebody is struggling to pay, we do an Equifax public sector gateway database, and we see those who are struggling, we always help, but those who can afford to pay, we try to recover the debt. Because this is, as Councillor Frank says, is money for the council. But you also have to take into account is when somebody is getting a housing benefit of 2,000 and suddenly there's a backdate payment for 15,000 over the 10 months, it's not easy, but we try to recover as much as possible. And you will see in one of the paragraphs 16, 15, when we write off those debt, it still stays on our database. So if for some reason that person make another claim and back start working, so even it's written off, we go back and start to bill and recover that as well. But it's quite when you're managing 63 million of housing benefit, it's quite a time-consuming job as well. Thank you.
Yes, let's take portfolio holder, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just following up, Councillor Ali, on your comments about the management of debt over the council, yes, it's something we're looking at. We're looking at early intervention, we're looking at maximising income, we're looking at proper debt advice, and it's all part of the transformation programme. So, yes, there is something going to happen. It's going to take a bit of time still, but it's being looked at, so I think I know where you're coming from with that question. Okay.
Happy with that? Okay, yes, sir.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Good to know from the portfolio holder that they're looking into further programs to help with that. I just want to know about this overpayment. Is there no mechanism to stop it in the first place happening? Why is there overpayment? Why can't it be stopped? And two, the targets. I want to ask about the targets, if the targets could be increased, and could that help debt recovery as well to help us get more money? And I think the third question, you mentioned paragraph 15, Dev. I just want to know if there has been any debt that has been resurrected in the last few years. Thank you.
Okay, so I will try the technical bit. I will refer to overpayment. What is an overpayment? And I've explained. If, let's say, we assess somebody is entitled to, let's say, £1,000 benefit every month. So when we do the assessment, we ask all the information, we just process. And every month we keep carrying on paying until that person informs us there's a change in circumstances. If they start working, they've got more income. So we do another assessment, and normally we do it within 14 days. But if somebody didn't inform that they're working, and we know after, let's say, 6 months, in the meantime, we carry on paying the £1,000. So this means that if the assessment of the 6 months says they were entitled to 500, then we go back and say it's their responsibility to inform us ASAP any change in circumstances. So this means that we have been overpaying £500 for 6 months. We say, here's a bill that you owe us 3,000. So then we start to look at the circumstances, and if they can afford to pay all the 3,000, fine. But if they struggle, then we make arrangements for payment, and then we try to recover that. So that's why we call that an overpayment. Second, in terms of the target, it's difficult to recover housing benefit debt because, as I've mentioned, if 6 months we've overpaid 3,000 because somebody didn't declare their emoluments or their savings, if they got a savings account, we find it difficult because not everybody who is claiming benefits will have £3,000-4,000 in the bank. If they have, then we try to recover ASAP. So the percentage is, I think, in the region of 90%. We try to recover as much as possible, so it's difficult. If you got things like a commercial rent or things like that, but here we have to have the fine balance, how much we can recover, but at the same time look at how much the claimant can afford to pay. And sometimes we take cases to the court, and court will agree that sometimes even some of the debt we are recovering maybe 15 years, £10 per month or £5 per month. So still we try to recover, because even £5-10 when you have 63 million, you've got quite a lot of £5, £10, it all adds up. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. You have mentioned about anything below 10,000 can be written off. What measure you use the 10,000 benchmark? Like, what sort of things you decide? What factor you decide for 10,000 below you can write off? And also another additional question: if you can tell me what is the percentage of the total debt is below 10,000? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think the 10,000 is what has been approved by the council. So under the delegation, anything below 10,000 is for me section 1.5 officer to look at it and say, okay, we can write it off. Anything above 10,000, that has been agreed by the council. Now, what criteria has been used? Yeah, somebody, at one point it was 5,000, but there was quite a lot coming to FRG and executive. So I think 6 years ago, executive decided, let's make it sort of 10,000. Can this be increased or reduced? Well, we can look at it, but I think we felt based on the level of overpayment and the quantum of the housing benefit 63 million, we saw 10,000 is something which we can regard it as material or significant. As Councillor Frank says, the members need to be aware of. Yeah. We do make a provision, so because housing benefit debt are not easy to collect, or some takes much longer, 5-10 years to recover. So we try to, any debt, I think above 4 or 5 years, we by and large make 100% provision. So in the accounts we've already provided, so 421 won't have an impact on the revenue budget, because these are all debt, and by and large we've already made a provision of 100%. So we are quite, because we know it's difficult to recover, we make sort of significant provision after 2-3 years. In terms of what percentage, I can come back on that, because those 10,000 will take us for 2020, but what is what is left, we can get back. If that's okay, Chair, we can come back on that to say how much is still outstanding above 10,000. Yeah?
Anybody else? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, David. Yeah, come to you in a sec.
No, that's absolutely fine. There are one or two things here that perhaps I need to have an explanation for. We have here items, I'll take the first one, which states on Appendix 1, page 35, somebody is recorded as being deceased in 1999, and we're still paying, albeit only 26 quid, in 2014. Surely, if somebody is deceased, should that not have meant that the bank account would have ceased? And in which case, why haven't we picked up the fact that bank account details have changed? If somebody has been declared insolvent, as in about the fifth one down, fourth or fifth, there is a notification publicly that somebody has been made bankrupt or whatever. Why haven't we picked that up? There are so many issues. I know it's very complicated, but there are so many issues when I look at this list that suggest that perhaps we have some concerns about our own systems for tracking some of this information. The other thing I would say is that in some instances it might be that hidden underneath these figures somewhere is somebody continuing to be able to live in some form of family accommodation owned by the council rather than being in temporary accommodation. And that may well be a concern. But it does strike me that there is something very badly amiss with our ability to track these debts.
I think the question over the deceased was actually answered in response to Councillor Abbas's question. But yeah, if you'd like to follow up on the others, please.
I think I can, yeah, but the deceased one, yeah. I think what you've got here is the reference number is the person. The invoices is the invoices we raise. The status is why those invoices. And the deceased doesn't mean the date the person deceased. The deceased means some person deceased after the date. So it's just a status. We say why we are writing off those debt is because deceased. So it's not that the person deceased and we carry on raising invoices. In terms of the TA, if anybody, they are in TA, that's not for the matter of the housing benefit, but if we get notification from our fraud hub to say there is somebody who's got a sort of, in HRA has got a social housing property, but at the same time are claiming, they are entitled to claim benefits, but if they are claiming benefits we are not entitled to, so that's housing benefit we alert. And if we think there is something which is wrong here, then we've got our shared anti-fraud service who will look at those things. And we do come across in terms of council tax, single person discount. So we do look at a lot of things, and regularly those members who are on audit committee, we bring those, some even we prosecute as well. But the bit is, we have to be very careful is, we have to have the right balance, right information, and if the information you've got is point out that somebody has been fraudulently claiming something, then if the case is, yeah, we do. In benefits, Andrew will correct me, because of the benefits, some of the cases are dealt by DWP,
That's great, yeah.
And they've got a threshold, anything debt which is 5 million, 5,000, I think lately, they are not even interested. But if there's any cases we think there is in a public interest for us to bring those cases, then we can still ask our shared anti-fraud service to look into it. So it's quite complex in itself, the legislation, but we've got the shared anti-fraud service who are quite effective to say where we think there has been some fraudulent claim, we do pursue. But there's a cost benefit as well, is how much you spend on pursuing and how much is the debt. So there's a lot of factors we take into account to say, okay, yeah, but let's write off, or no, we carry on pursuing then. Thank you.
I may just follow up. I guess I'd be happier if these sorts of debts were being considered soon after the financial year end of the council that they apply to, rather than having this very large amount of money in one hit. I think we ought to have got there quicker.
I agree. Going forward, we'll make it more timely. So we'll try to write off. There's a lot we go through, and we don't just, we'll look at the evidence, we look at everything. We don't just, so the process of due diligence we go before we bring this. But you're right, we'll try to bring more sooner rather than later. But on this one, as I said, from a revenue budget point of view, we've already made 100% provision, so we won't have any impact on the budget. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, madam.
Already Dave explained the answer of my question I was thinking to ask, and he asked already, so there is no need.
I don't normally sit on this committee, so forgive my naivety, but how does our performance in terms of this report compare to other similar councils? Do you measure that performance?
We have indicators, so I can take note of that and send a response by email. So how much is, So we've got performance like how fast we process change circumstances. So we've got performance, but I will look at it and I will get back to you to say, okay, compare to our statistical neighbors. You can't always compare with some affluent councils where there's less benefit payment, or council tax is much easier to collect. So I will give you some statistical neighbors, so similar societies with similar demographic. So I will provide you that information. Thank you.
If you could email a response to that, Dev, that would be helpful. I'm sure Matt will pass it on to all members. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I have just looked into Appendix 1. The latest date is December 2020. Is there any bad debt record between 2020, like from 21 till today? Because on the appendix it's just till December 2020.
So if we write off any debt, yes, we've got a record, and any debt which is written off above 10,000 comes to FRG and goes to executive. So that is already in executive. And any debt which we are going to write off, if it's below 10,000, that won't come to FRG. But if it's above 10,000, we'll have to FRG. So we do keep a record of all. And even the debt is written off as one of the paragraph, we still keep like debts written off, but then if somebody reappears on our radar, then we'll try to recover those debt as well. So sometimes you have debt written off is written back as well. So reinstate those debt as well. So we do keep a record.
Thank
you. Anybody else? Okay, I guess the recommendation then is that we recommend executive to proceed with writing off this £400,000. Everybody comfortable with that? Thank you very much indeed. So we move on then to what amounts to an explanation of the process. And here we are asked to make any comments or suggestions that might improve the success of the process. Who's going to present this for us, please? Thank you, Shakira.
Good evening, members. So I am discussing the corporate write-off report that was taken to exec for approval in September 2023, but an explanation of why that was the case. So at the time, £818,000 of statute-barred housing debt was approved to be written off. It is important to note that at the time, that was several years' worth of write-offs between the years 2009 and 19 that were built up because there was an absence of a former tenant arrears team at that time, so nobody really monitoring that going forward. What we have found is that £322,000 worth of that did actually relate to bed and breakfast accommodation. This accommodation, at the moment, the council actually passes the direct cost of that accommodation onto the tenants. So that could be in approximately £500 a week in rent, which is excessively high and is unaffordable for the tenant to pay. And that's what has resulted in the affordable amounts being requested for write-off at that time. At the moment, we do have a former tenants arrears team in, and they have been really progressing this area. Last year, I think the target was 350k to collect, and they actually collected 506, so they exceeded that, and we're on target at the moment as well this year with the former tenant recovery team. I think just to note as well that it is important to kind of recognise that management of current arrears is effective so that they don't become former tenant debt. And we have a new team in place that focus directly on income management. We've got a new team manager with experience, with sort of reporting benefits experience, and the legal side of housing into the team in-house so that we can deal with these on a more efficient basis. What we're also doing is we're looking at a rent review, and a paper is due for approval in the coming weeks to look at those bed and breakfast costs and bring them down and peg them to the LHA, to the 2024 LHA rate, which is actually an affordable rate for a tenant in the private sector, for example, to actually pay, so that those write-offs going forward will be minimised. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened yet, which means that to date there will still be some write-offs that are requested at the end of the financial year based on those high levels of rent that we pay. And I'd just like to note on point 19 on the white paper, there is a typo. So what we've said is in, so apologies for that, but in quarter 1 this year, the FTA actually stands at the figure is there, stands at this amount compared to, it should say 2023-2024. So last year it was 4,937,541, and it has gone up slightly by £113,000. So that's where we are at the moment.
Could you just give me that paragraph number again, please?
On the paperwork, it's 19.19.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Hussain.
Can I ask you, in terms of these temporary accommodation debt, these are predominantly families in these temporary accommodation, isn't it?
Yeah, a significant proportion of them are families.
Yeah. So really, most of the debt would be where they have to make a contribution themselves, which is above what you're getting the housing benefit. Am I right?
Yeah, so if they are entitled to full housing benefit, then that amount will be paid for them, but there are a significant proportion who are, for example, benefit capped because of their circumstances. And, for example, DWP would expect between them, if they're a couple, to earn a certain threshold, and if they don't, then their benefits are capped to £500 in total for that week, and one of the first benefits that they will reduce is housing benefit, so the housing costs, so they actually don't get, I think it's 50p they get a week. So we know that they can't afford to pay any more than that. What we expect, or what DWP would expect, is them to take up and secure paid employment or increase their hours. And what we're doing with those families in particular is providing that sort of wraparound support, discretionary support, trying to maximise their income, trying to encourage and empower them to go and look out for work and increase their hours so that they can take themselves out of that criteria for the benefit cap. And if that happens, then they are better off. So their entitlement to benefits aren't capped, and of course they have their earnings, and then they can make those contributions to towards their rent. However, I think in terms of B&B, £500 a week is still too much. So that's why we've kind of, we're setting out this paper to say, let's peg all of our rents across the board in TA to the LHA rate, which is, again, that's central government saying that that is the level which is acceptable, is affordable for our tenants across the board, not just in TA, private sector, etc. So if we peg it at that, at least if they are on partial housing benefits, we can expect them to be able to pay that difference and that shortfall. At the moment, we can't.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking you that would be staying in a hotel or something like that, which would cost them that sort of money, £500 extra. Is that right, or is that just an ordinary three-bedroom accommodation?
No, it's the bed and breakfast hotels. Yeah, it is just the hotels.
Okay. Yeah. Because if I were to understand, if you were to evict them, then you have a statutory duty towards the children, the local authority, does it not? And
so it depends on.
Will have to
it depends on.
Anyway.
Yeah, so it depends on intentionality. Yeah, absolutely. So and that's why they're written off. So that's why we class that part of the rent arrears that is unaffordable, and then it is. We request that they're written off, so they won't be. The last thing we want to do is evict tenants. What we would do is provide all of that support that we could do, and get them into that position where they can successfully maintain that tenancy, quickly move them on from bed and breakfast. But in terms of, I mean, this is not my area to talk about, but in terms of properties that the council can actually bring on board, you know, it's limited in Luton at the moment. So bed and breakfast, we have no option but to use them.
I was trying to understand the recovery is more difficult when it's a family with children, very vulnerable. If we were to evict them from the housing, then the same council will have to pick it up, build somewhere else, call the children's house.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for the report. I think it's concise and straight to the point. Well, I want to say, okay, paragraph 7, anyway, thank you. It echoed what I mentioned earlier, though not related, about trying to minimize the debt in the first place to prevent it, which has been highlighted. In paragraph 21, it came to saying something about job security and to people losing their job, which on that same paragraph, you've set a target, which is an increase. So with that job security issue, are you still able to meet up with that target? Is that still a reality?
Sorry, can you just repeat that? Sorry.
Okay. The question is this: on that last paragraph 21, I think you say it was mentioned that within the team there's no job security.
Okay, yeah.
Just need clarity, if, and you've set a target from, I think, 350,000 to 500,000. Hope doesn't affect your target for the year or what you've, for the report.
So yeah, it is a recommendation that we have made to secure those posts for former tenant arrears officers. It is something that we have asked for approval. I mean, we are on track at the moment to collect that, but it is something that we've requested approval for. And we would absolutely like that to happen because obviously we can see the benefits of having that team.
Any more? Councillor Wynne.
Yes, one I guess aimed more towards Dev than the reporting officer, I suspect. between this report and the one that we just considered previously, there's very large amounts of money. Are they properly taken into account on your forecast of the state of our finances, Deb? Because we seem to have some large numbers that I don't think are very obvious in the accounts.
Yeah, we do. I think, as members said, in terms of our collection, so when you look at council tax, we've got the collection performance, and we do look at all the council. But HRA itself, the amount of rent which we charge is quite a lot. And what is quite important here is the housing department and the benefits department will have to work closely, and that's what sometimes happens is somebody is renting a property and they are in TA, but in the meantime, if they don't submit the housing benefit, so you've got the duty to house them, but then we say, okay, provide your papers and everything because we process your housing benefit, and then in the meantime, we're paying and they're not entitled to housing benefit. Some of not recourse to public fund, that's where the debt arises. But coming back to what, yes, we do take into account, so collection of council tax, collection of business rate, parking we've discussed earlier, we look at that. So it's always, we try to see, okay, if we provide too much provision, then it creates a gap in our budget, but if you provide too less provision, then eventually is more write-off, then you create pressure. So we do try to do that, and every quarter, 6 months, we look at what is happening. Right now, we are looking at the council tax performance, you know, when we're setting next year's council tax to say what will happen, can we increase our performance or not, and what is happening, things like council tax reduction scheme, how many people are claiming more or less. So we do look at it, but there's a lot of areas we provide tradeways, in terms of planning, parking, housing benefit, housing debt, HRA debt. So HRA debt is outside this one. I'd say HRA debt is outside, or is HRA debt included?
No, this is not HRA.
This is not HRA. So we've got HRA, its own fund account. So yeah, but yeah, we do. So we do adjust our provision accordingly when we set the budget, because we have to demonstrate that we've put a robust budget. Thanks.
Just a follow-up question, just a very straightforward, simple question. I sort of get the impression from the numbers we've been seeing tonight that things are getting worse. Is that a fair view?
I think for housing benefit, I wouldn't say it's getting worse, because 5, 6 years ago or 10 years ago, we were waiting for the national fraud initiatives to produce the data match. And based on data match, then we know if somebody has not been declaring the income. So we joined the fraud hub where we get the information monthly. So even if somebody has not declared or hasn't informed us about change in circumstances, then we'll pick up those rather than 2 years or 3 years. And by the time you pick up, you investigate, the time goes on. So you can, yeah. In terms of housing, based on the economic climate, based on interest rate, we are coming out of COVID. There has been sort of potentially slowing down the economy. Interest rates have been high, inflation. So when you take all these into account, yes, collecting debt will be difficult because people are struggling. So we look at people's circumstances. So I wouldn't say it's getting worse, is the circumstances have changed because more and more people are struggling to make payment. So we always look at what arrangement we can make, how we can support us. The councillor mentioned, Councillor Hussain, we can just go and somebody's not paying their rent, say, okay, you're not paying, we'll take you, eviction, and yeah. But if that person has got, family has got children, then go to children, and we say, now we have to put them in temporary accommodation. So we look at across department, not just look at has a debt that person has got to pay. We look at, Councillor mentioned earlier, we're looking at across and how we can provide support as well in terms of debt servicing and in terms of how we can provide support for somebody to prioritize which debt is priority to pay first and then which debt. So it's not easy because you're dealing with real people here. So families, children. So we have to take everything into account rather than just, we can just send a letter and if it's not escalate and bailiff and court and everything, and then the unintended consequences can back to bite us. So it's yeah. So we work across department to see exactly. And sometimes somebody has got a council tax debt, has got a housing benefit debt, has got a parking debt. So we've got to help, as Councillor mentioned, how we can help them to prioritize which debt is priority debt.
Thank you. I know it was a general question, but it's helped me a bit. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I was just going to come in. I mean, this is probably, instead of debt recovery, we should be focusing on people not getting into debt. And I just wondered what we were doing around temporary accommodation and stuff, because obviously we don't want to be writing off £800,000. And what are we doing to stop people getting into debt and us getting into debt?
Okay, so the first point, just going back to actually that rent review, that will really, really help, because if we're actually setting affordable levels of rents, they're more likely to be able to afford that, so we'll be writing off less. I also mentioned, I'll just expand a little bit more, so the focus at the moment is how to enable and empower the tenant to be able to afford more and to be able to successfully maintain their tenancies. So a lot of work at the moment is being put into sort of providing, whether it's discretionary financial support, but also just empowerment and signposting and encouraging, you know, referrals through to other voluntary organisations. I had mentioned the benefit cap, so one of the reasons are they're not in employment, so the claimant or the applicant or their partner do not find employment because they have younger children. Looking at sort of childcare services so they can put their children, you know, and try and get themselves out of that benefit cap so that they can actually earn a little bit more and pay towards it a little bit more. We have also referral pathways into sort of the welfare support team within the council as well, who can make sort of adult learning referrals, so people maybe if there's a language barrier, etc., you know, so assistance with CV, writing CVs, interview techniques, all of that kind of thing. We have all pathways into all of that, and that's the sort of piece of work that we're working in now for that, to provide that holistic sort of empowerment to that tenant so that they are able to afford more rather than, you know, because affordable housing nowadays, yeah.
For that, I appreciate all of that, but I was thinking, are we doing anything to avoid our reliance on bed and breakfast and hotels and stuff like that? I thought we were doing stuff, I don't know, Dev or Rob.
Yeah, but I think, to touch on another point, there's another element to that. So if somebody becomes homeless, there's a duty for the council to find an accommodation. Now, you're much more expert, but I'm making it simple. Then if we rent a property ourselves because of a duty, then you have to pay a market rent. So we as the council take responsibility, we pay market rent, but then based on the circumstances of that person, as my colleague said, we charge them LHA rate. So straight away between LHA rate, because it's more affordable for them to pay or to claim benefits, and the market rent, that's why we've got a big gap in our temporary accommodation overpayment of nearly 3-4 million. So, okay, we can reduce the amount we're charging, don't to create a debt, but between the market rent and that we have to pay. So then, if we don't find a property, like a private sector leasing, then we have to find bed and breakfast, hotels, and those are expensive. So what we have been doing, and you will see there's a report which went to executive and is going to full council now, is we are looking at properties which we can buy rather than putting in B&B. But at the same time, the housing issue is a national issue. We can't just borrow our way or build our way. We can build, but you have to borrow to build. We have to make sure the project is viable. If you borrow to buy properties, there's a limit how much you can put debt on our balance sheet. So we can't just say borrow £500 million and just buy 500 properties and yeah. So it's not, yeah. So we try to, and we are buying, we bought maybe in the region of 30 or 40 million of properties already, yeah. But you have to buy the right properties, the one which there's a need now with large families, and that's the one, and that's what we're trying to, how we can get, yeah. And stage is another example, the stage project which was approved, so there are larger properties in the stage, and the HRA is buying a block there for larger families. So we're trying to do, but it's quite quite not that straightforward, because we don't have, if we had sort of a couple of billion in our bank as cash receipt, then it's different. But anything we do in the council, we've got to borrow. So we've got to borrow, we've got to amortize the debt, we've got to amortize the debt servicing as well, so it's not. So, but yeah, we're doing, there are projects coming where right now, then today we're looking at a property where potentially we are going to make an offer. But it's the right balance, we can't, because at the end of the day, when we buy a property, when we put the debt and the interest, and then when we claim is a LHA rate, and the debt servicing and the interest is more, still the additional payment come on council tax. So council taxpayers will have to pay, because to subsidize that difference between LHA and market rate, we have to put, so there's something else which we could have done, so we have to prioritize whether we put the additional subsidy into housing or we have other services, social care, which are under pressure. So it's not easy. Those are decisions we get made and discuss, and FRG members get involved how we set our budget. So it's conflicting priorities, the money is not enough, and you just have to balance it in order to deliver the priorities of the council. Sorry, it's a long-winded question, but housing is very much easier. If you look at housing, when the Q2 will come, housing is a big challenge. And it's not here, it's everywhere is a big challenge, housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dev, and I welcome that you are looking at properties and reducing our reliance on bed and breakfast and hotels, so thank you.
Yes, Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Also, there's what he's talking about coming to full council is a programme called TAPS 4, Temporary Accommodation Purchase Scheme. We have 3, 2 and 1. Not only are we looking to get 4 through council on Tuesday, we're doing a review on 3, 2, 1. We're ready to see what money's still available, what properties do we actually need, and also looking to get a delivery programme through those programmes as well. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. On the point 4, you have mentioned there was 9,000, there's debt build up due to staff absence on the temporary accommodation, point number 4. And the reason is mentioned because of the restructuring issues and retirement. So any organization is a common, on the HR perspective, is a common norms like restructurings and retirement. Can you ensure we should not happen in the future, like, due to the HR issue, we will lose the revenue due to the staff absence. So we should have, not, put this, bring these issues, a HR issue, rather than, who's the responsible on that time, on the temporary accommodation, why it's not been debt not been collected during the 2009 to 2019. So is there any measure you will ensure in the future it shouldn't happen due to staff absence or restructuring? Thank you.
It is a bit a general question, yeah. I think it's more relevant, but across the council, yeah, we have sort of sometimes in terms of recruitment, in terms of when we're going through a change process, but you've got a valid point. We have to make sure that if you've got sort of some areas where we've got key posts, we have to recruit and fill those posts ASAP. But it has not been easy coming out of COVID and even now to recruit in some of the key posts. And debt recovery is quite a specific. It's not the normal, because you have to deal with people, difficult conversation over the phone. So you're absolutely right. If there is any lessons learned, is if we could have filled those posts early and everything, of course we'll look at that. So yeah, so that's probably I would say in terms of, yeah, it's if we can fill those posts, yeah, but it's quite a specialist skill in recovering debt. You need to have very tactful but compassion as well. You can't just, yeah. So the valid point, we'll take a note of that, yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, my turn then. I've only got 2 questions really. The first one is just to make sure I've correctly understood the answers that have been given to various questions on bed and breakfast. As I understand what we've been told, where a homeless family is in bed and breakfast, you currently charge them the full cost of the bed and breakfast, but your new plan is to charge them local housing allowance figure, which is appropriate to their accommodation needs. So that means you are then using a different budget to cover the difference between the local housing allowance figure that you're charging them, which may well be covered by housing benefit, of course, and the figure you're actually paying for the B&B. Have I correctly understood that?
You are correct. So housing benefit will pay the full amount. So say if we work on the £500, so housing benefit will pay the full amount, the £500. However, there is a subsidy clawback which happens in the background, even now. That £500 subsidy will claw back anything between the 2011 LHA rate and what is paid out. So they will pay anything, whatever we charge. So at the moment, we do have that background transaction clawback. This will just mean that rather than the background transaction clawback, it will happen via another pot. And I think I'm going to look at Dev for the answer on this one.
I think I can help on that.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert, but I have been involved in it. So it exactly pick up, Councillor, the point was made by Councillor there. What this will do is currently, if we are paying B&B, let's say 1,500, so we'll charge in that person 1,500, and then that person can pay, based on a LHA rate, £1,000, that 500 become a debt because we charge them 1,500. Going forward, we'll charge £1,000, so it doesn't become a debt, but because we are losing, that will be an overpayment on temporary accommodation. So the loss will be still the loss, but what will happen is rather than is a debt which is writing off, is at the outset, it will be the amount we are recovering against the market rate we are paying. So it will be TA loss rather than a debt which we are writing off. But the end result, as I said, on our council budget will be more or less the same.
Thank you. And just to prove that we do welcome the involvement of the appropriate executive members, I've got a question for Rob, actually. We're told that the team of 5 staff that currently deal with debt recovery is not covered by establishment budget. And therefore, I guess the question has to be, are you able to give us any assurance that they will continue to be employed to do this task?
Well, I suppose as much as assurance we can give in an employment world, really, in all fairness. But can I refer to Sarah? Can you answer Sarah at all? Okay, I think we get back to you in writing, David, if that's okay on that one, to committee on writing. But probably as much assurance as we can do. But if I look at the way it's set up, and I'll get back to the committee in writing. Is that okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we are asked to make any suggestions that we may wish to make to improve the recovery situation. Anybody got anything to say about that? We have had mention of it in various of the questions and comments that we've had. In that case, we move to the recommendation, or whatever we want to send as a reference to the executive. I would suggest a two-pronged recommendation to executive. One, that the debt recovery team be thanked for their efforts and congratulated in recovering very substantial sums of money in very trying circumstances. And the second recommendation to executive, I guess, is that we recommend they make every effort to ensure in next year's budget that this team is allowed to continue to do its work. Everybody happy with that? Anybody else want to add anything? In that case, thank you very much.